Things I don't drive into 7th Street. It's not automatic. It's a whole different story.
I'd like to order, Wyoming Valley West School District's, work session for Wednesday, August 3rd, 2022.
I don't think we can hear it, Rick. Can we pull the mic a little closer?
Better, Brian?
Thank you. A little far away.
I'd like to call to order the Wyoming Valley West School District's work session for Wednesday, August 3rd, 2022. Moment of silence, followed by a salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
On a roll call,
Mrs. Cassatt,
Here.
Mr. DeBaskis,
Here.
Mr. Hardwick,
here.
Mr. Camus,
Here.
Mr. Keating,
Here.
Mr. Majer, Mr. Perfetto,
Here.
Mr. Pazinski,
Here.
Mr. Usavage.
Superintendent's comments, Mr. Tosh.
I have no comments tonight, Mr. Camus.
Thank you, Mr. Tosh. There's no one in the audience this evening. I don't believe we're taking comments off Zoom, correct? We decided that. Under general recommended action, from 1 through, well, it looks like 19. Is there any questions on that anybody has that this was presented?
Rick, I just had a question about Curly is it basically the same as last year? Are we continuing the same services? Will Curly be at the middle school as well?
That's what I understand, yes.
Okay,
And the rest of
supporting,
our building.
and will he kind of report to the SRO officer as far as duties and stuff like that?
That's the way I understood it as well.
Okay, thank you.
I have one question just for the board to consider. Actually, item number 1. The board's been reimbursing 60% of the crossing guard cost for the longest time. And we've been paying a rate of $10 an hour. We're having a heck of a time staffing crossing guard positions. They're 3 hours a day, as you know. Unless you get someone retired or moms that are taking their kids to those particular bus stops, it becomes very difficult. And we had people that came here to some meetings. I believe the Chester Street was one of them. And we could sit as a board and say all we want, that we'll send a cop there, but that's never a guarantee. If the cops are tied up on other things, they can't staff these bus stops. All I was asking for is, this may not affect all 9 communities. It may be problem in others and not so. And just asking if we had to increase our rates to say $11 or $12 an hour to attract crossing guards, would the board still consider reimbursing 60% of an increased rate? Just something for the board to consider before next week. I'm speaking right now with problems that we're facing in Kingston. We clearly have the most bus stops because we're the largest community, but we're having a heck of a time finding people for $10 an hour. So I just ask for a little flexibility in increasing the rate to maybe attract some people.
I have no problem with that.
Thank you, Mr. Keating. And does anybody have any problems with that?
I guess just before we ask it, it says 60%, but do we have in our policy that it is $10 an hour, or? Because all we're approving is a percentage. We don't know how much each borough charges, right?
I just, like I said, we've been paying 10, I know, for a few years now. it's not working.
Right. No, I agree. I know it's hard to find them. For sure.
And I just want the board to know that it's not working. And if the board wished to put a ceiling on it or just be open to meeting the needs of the individual communities, I'm just asking for consideration that if we have to bump up to $11 or $12 an hour to attract crossing guards, that the board would consider reimbursing 60% of that rate.
Lou, can I ask, would you notice that? I mean, do you know what each
We would have to
town
look at
charges
the-
per
yeah, we
hour?
would look at, we could just pull the bills. and
But
see
do we look at that now at all?
What?
Do we know how much if each town does charge the same amount for
No,
crossing?
not, I couldn't tell you if one is
Probably-
11, one is
probably
12,
not.
but we could, because straight, everything goes through accounts payable, and we could just pull a couple bills, the latest bills, and see what the rate is. And we have that, and we could send an email out.
It's very difficult.
I will say this, Mr. Keating, from going up Market Street and up Wyoming Ave in the morning, obviously you're talking about some very congested and dangerous streets in terms of the crossing guards do a tremendous job. They're a tremendous asset to the community here. And I just think anything that we could do to attract them would be, in my mind, really a step in the right direction. They're an essential part of the school district and they do a great job. And again, Market Street and Wyoming Ave are very busy in the morning.
I agree. Wouldn't it make sense if we maybe look at this to say, instead of a percentage, why wouldn't we pay all crossing guards a rate? Whether they're in Kingston, whether they're in 44, whether they're in Plymouth.
I would think, Bill, just trying to wear both hats on that, it would be subject also, because now you're going to tell the other local communities what the rate is, and the smaller communities may not, $12 an hour to Kingston may not mean what $9 an hour does to another community. So I think that might become an issue on whether or not there's an ability to pay on the local government side the increased rate.
All right, I get it now. Okay, thank you. I see.
Anything else on that? Thank you, Mr. Freeman.
No, thank you.
Any other questions on, what did I say, 1 through 19?
So, Mr. Vice Chair, I don't know how we ended up on that. Just, we are going to do X with the last topic. We are going to increase.
So I think that is something that is left up to the local communities. That's what I understand. And would we be willing to reimburse that? I
I
feel
think
the
what, Bill, what
consensus
needs to
is yes.
be looked into is, I'm under the assumption that because we've been paying $10 an hour, maybe that was a rate set by the board or something. I'm more so asking maybe there's not a ceiling on it. Maybe if we sent a bill over for $15 an hour, we may get reimbursed 60% of that. I don't know what the school's policy is on that. I'm just asking for more flexibility in terms of if we need to compensate more, that the board, that the school will reimburse 60%. And if there's an issue with that, what would we choose as a ceiling to say, okay, after $12 or $13 an hour, we'll reimburse up to 60% of that, but then you're on your own if you go over that. That's all I was asking for, is some guidance on that, because $10 an hour, our finance director and our administrative assistant ran back to see me today and reminded me again, they brought this up to me before, please ask if we could advertise for more money, because we have many vacancies.
So I guess what I'm learning is if whatever submitted at this point in time, we're gonna pay 60%.
And I,
If a town raises their rate that they pay a crossing guard, we'll pay 60% of that rate. I was kind of thinking when somebody must have negotiated something with each town,
The 60%.
but that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
So maybe the whole thing should be revisited. To your point, here's the ceiling. We'll do 60%, but that cost
Of
can't go
maximum.
over.
So why don't we do this? Could we just have that pool, so, and sent to all the board members? That way we can have that sent to all the board members this week. We can all look at that for
Yeah.
next week.
and I would, I would depend on what Lou or our new business manager, Mr. Widiak, if they were to say, hey, guys, listen, you know, you have 150 guards out there across all towns. I wouldn't recommend you go over 12 or 13 or whatever it may be. I'll roll with that. I just wanted to bring it up for discussion purposes that, you know, we want to advertise at a higher rate because $10 an hour isn't working. And I wanted the board's input on that.
Lou, would you be able to look into that?
Yeah,
for
yeah,
us?
I'll look this, I'll
With
see what
Tom?
we're paying them now and see what kind of agreements or anything we have on file with the towns.
And if you can get that out to Mr. Tosh and the
Yeah.
board, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Is that good, Bill?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Anything else on 1 through 19 from anybody?
Just on 19 from the athletic committee, I got a call from our athletic director who received a call from our wrestling coach, Ryan Vasello, about the possibility of creating a co-op agreement for wrestling with Holy Redeemer. Redeemer had an agreement with Dallas, which is expired, I guess, after this year. So we're just looking into it. From a numbers standpoint, our wrestling program is already in the largest division, 3A. So it wouldn't affect us numbers wise or anything like that, but we'll look at all that anyway. And Nick Gill has a meeting with Mr. Andreyko, I think, over at Redeemer to talk about it. Nothing definite, just talking about it.
I think it's exciting.
I think it's a great idea to get more kids involved and
Absolutely.
if it helps our program, it'll help them. And so, yeah, we're in discussions.
Excellent. Great to hear.
Mr. Vice Chair, I'll chime in real quick on 19 then with Essers, and I'm gonna defer a little bit to Lou. But I will tell you, the committee has not met since our last official meeting, although there's been email exchanges. Lou, updates on Essers. Essers 1 is completed. Essers 2, we have a small remainder of funds to utilize.
Yeah. Yes,
And Essers 3 is part of the proposal down further from,
yeah, we have received some funds from Messrs 3. And we
Okay.
received 2 payments so far. The reports for the end of June were submitted for Essers, so they're in. And I'm going to update, I'll update you where we're at as now that June is pretty well closed. Or I'm sorry, July. So then I can update everybody through July as far as where our expenses are and what our funding is, what's left.
and certainly before you leave, I'm going to try to get the Essers group together with yourself and Tom.
Yeah.
Who would be a key part of that going forward to kind of just make sure we're all in sync with where we're
Okay.
at this point.
Okay.
I'll try to do that in August. And I would only add that we could put one more star or whatever these little things are. We did form a new special education committee. The participants, Mr. Perfetto, Mr. Camus, Mr. DeBoskis, myself from the board, and Maria Barada and Mr. Tosh. I think that comprises, and others, I guess, as needed, but that pretty much comprises the committee. We did meet to go over, we met to do some interviewing, but that's as far as we got. So that's a report from them.
I would just like to add for the minutes that Mr. Hardwick is the chair of that committee.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else?
You know, just about technology, I was talking today about this huge booklet that we have here. So we have a site that Anthony has helped me set up, not a site, it's a SharePoint. So all of these documents, I think in the future, the agenda, obviously, but we could put links to every one of these documents instead of printing them out and creating this, 150-page book of 5 trees that we killed. Is that a direction you'd like to see instead of, do we need to print out all these documents or? I mean, the agenda, yes, I understand the agenda, but if we could create a link on the agenda, when you get your emailed agenda, that will go right to the document, if you want to open it. Is everybody okay with doing something like that?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good.
I am.
Joanne actually started it and Jen did a great job. I like the way I have it. It's all right in front of me. I'm perfect. All my documents are attached to it.
I
So,
I
yeah.
can tell you from working with Joanne, who did a great job with it, and obviously Mrs. Bullock, it's very time consuming. It's probably a 3 or 4 hour period of time that she's working on that booklet. And I think it's much more efficient going the direction that we're talking.
So,
She
yeah.
looks disappointed not to make these.
So Jen, I'll get with you and we'll talk about that. And I think I sent you the link to that SharePoint. Everybody has access. Initially, I mean, every board member and I believe every admin will have access to that SharePoint location. I think in the future, we could talk about opening up to the public, but that adds a little more security concerns and stuff like that. So, but we'll, instead of printing out this big book anymore, we'll just, you get the agenda, but then there'll be links on the agenda that'll take you, if you want to look at the document, right to the document.
To that light.
Brian, she emails us too. You can have an email to you.
But even the email, Janet, it contains all the files. You won't even need to email the files anymore. You'll
No,
just,
I understand, but I'm just saying, if you don't want to get the booklet sent to you anymore, you can you have it emailed to you.
Brian, to that point, I know you were kind of took it upon yourself. Well, thankfully took it upon yourself to, I know you started working something with Anthony to get us all our list of contracts, all our vendors and all our contracts. Are we working on that pretty well or?
well, yeah, I mean, so all this stuff that's in here now that Jen knows where that site is at. All of these things that she put in this book could now go into that location. So I
Okay.
think as we move forward, we'll start putting them in that location.
Okay, anything. Welcome.
Right, Jen? I mean, yeah, I mean, they'll all be there. Yep.
Thank you, Brian. Does anybody else?
Rick, I would just like to say that the personnel committee has been really busy over the over the past month. And I thank a lot of the board members and administrative staff members. Due to our financial downsizing through attrition, there were also lots of openings that were created from within. So we're hoping to have 14 to 16 names placed in front of the board next week for consideration. But lots of hours put in on those interviews, and thank everyone that participated in those.
Thank you. There was a lot of work. If nobody has anything, I do have a few things here in this list. With our new solicitor, Kellerman and Ceramboli, number 6, number 7. I know with the special education committee, we kind of discussed this in our first committee meeting, kind of looking at this. Mr. Tasha, from what I tell her, what I can remember, I think our contract with those technically has already expired. If we don't have this on the agenda for next week, it's going to put us way behind.
I think so.
So what I think I would like to see of our new solicitors be able to have time to review these contracts for us to make sure that they're comfortable with us when we go forward and sign this year's contract. I don't think it'll take a long time, but does everybody feel comfortable with that so they can have these contracts and review it?
I can tell you for next week, I would not be comfortable voting on 2 contracts that haven't been reviewed by the solicitor. I'm not the legal person and I would like to know that the solicitor's recommendation, just from a legal perspective, is there or not. with the language in the contract.
Well, if we could get these contracts, do you have the copy of these, or these, you should have the attachment of these two.
They were
contracts.
attached to the agreement.
They
They
were.
were sent today, right? I could look at them, but not, and that was one of my questions. Yeah, I'm on site electronic, so if you want us to do it, we'll do our best to get it done. for Wednesday.
Please do. I mean, I just would feel most comfortable with your
Yeah.
blessing on it.
Yeah, and I think we need to have a discussion going forward on all the contracts. What
Agreed.
extent you want us in, review,
Okay,
and we'll do it, no problem.
I'd love to engage. you.
Okay.
Awesome.
No problem.
So Rick, to the point, Mr. Tosh, if these were not voted on next week, and it did go 1 month, since they've already expired in June, that's problematic? There's no continuation clause in the contracts that say,
I'd have to defer that to the legal authorities with it. from a
maybe we
contract.
could do
can
a
take look at the
cursory
contract
review and
tomorrow.
say, hey,
Yeah, I'll get that bumped up for tomorrow.
because if we don't have to vote and we get a good full review, I personally would prefer that's the case, and we're not then throwing stuff at the new solicitors group that is probably just a lot to take on in a very short period of time.
We'll get that.
Thank you for your understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on, number 11.
The mic.
That proposal from A and E Group, I think that was a good proposal. I think it cleared up a lot of things. I'm very happy that, and I believe tomorrow, Mr. Guevara, we have a pre-bid meeting.
Yes, tomorrow night.
So tomorrow, 9 o'clock, we have a pre-bid meeting to get that, kind of kicked off. So that's pretty exciting. At least that's the way I feel.
I have to call in, but I will be on.
Pardon me?
If you need me for any reason, I would have to call in as part of buildings and grounds.
Okay, absolutely. No, we're. Going forward, on Buildings and Grounds Committee. I had a conversation with Mr. Guevara. He sent me an email. I don't have it. I'll pull it up, but. He can come up if we need him to. Our boiler for the pool is broken and is in need of repair. So he is currently seeking bids for our boiler for the pool. Hopefully you might have something for next week.
Well,
So we could potentially put this on the agenda or discuss it in open session next week if we need to look into this situation. And we're also having another problem with the lift at Dana Street. And that might be another $37,000 bill that kind of just fell into our laps. So I would like to bring this up for discussion for next week if everybody would be approving of that.
So on the question, are we, as we've all talked about, trying to get more than one bid, will we see multiple bids on the boiler for the pool?
So the boiler for the pool, I asked Mr. Guevara and he got two. For the lift for Dana Street, there's, from what I'm led to believe, there's only one vendor that could actually fix it, and that's the manufacturer. It's roughly a $30-some thousand bid. So, I mean,
And those are fine, but where we can get multiple or should get multiple bids, we should do that part.
I'm definitely trying to work on that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Harvey. And that's all I have at this moment. Staff recommended items, from 1 through 8. Does anybody have any questions on them? Everybody good? And finance recommended action. Everybody good with the bills? Anybody have any questions? Mr. Cardoni or?
I just had one question since we last met, with regards to the state funding, the kind of the budget that was passed. How did we do with that? Just an overall opinion on
We
it?
got an overall about a little over $4 million increase in basic ed and about $1 million in special ed, I think.
How about safety, security type of things? Anything, any extra monies given out for that or
The only thing I know is the $100,000 grant that Dave talked about.
$100,000 for
Yeah.
security? Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Anybody have any questions? Board members' comments, open discussion. Anybody have anything like that or just talk about? I would just like to say that we are looking into starting a safety committee that will be chaired by Mr. Dickon, obviously as our safety coordinator. Mr. Pazinski will be on it, and Mr. Perfetto, Mrs. Cassatt, and Mr. Hardwick
It could be an alternate.
as an alternate. So I'm happy I think that's gonna be awesome. I think that's great going forward, especially in the light of where we're at in this world. So that's all I had. Anything else?
Nope.
Nope.
Motion to adjourn. Oh,
So moved.
our next meeting will be August 10th, well, next Wednesday. Motion to adjourn
So moved.
by Tommy, second.